Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro friends. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by our upcoming event, Assertiveness Training for the Hospitality Industry, happening in Sydney, Australia on the 21st of September. Get your tickets at mappaforward.org/events. Today on the Daily Coffee Pro, we are talking about the little details that make or break your cafe. This came about because of me being in a cafe the other day, and it reminded me how much it pisses me off when I'm sitting in a cafe that's clearly gone to a lot of effort to either make their decor look good or to serve really delicious coffees, but the teaspoons that you get look fucking terrible and they're just super cheap. Like, you can just see that they're, 20-cent or 50-cent cheap metallic teaspoons that someone has bought at the 99-cent store or at like a discount store. I know that people that may be listening to this are thinking in the back of their mind, well, hashtag check your privilege, Lee. But listen, we're not talking about drinking tea or coffee at somebody's house that may not have a lot of money. We're talking about drinking a cup of coffee in an establishment whose job it is to serve coffee to the public. And that's a different ball game than serving coffee in somebody's house. In whatever I'm served in anyone's house, I am super grateful for whatever somebody offers me. I don't care whether it's instant coffee, whether it's beautiful china, whether it's disposable cups. I'm not in somebody's house to drink exquisite coffee. I'm in somebody's house because I've chosen to visit them and to experience them in their own surroundings. But it is a very different situation when you're in somebody's cafe. And so, that being said, I really wanted to talk about some of the different things that can make or break the way that people experience your cafe. And so a couple of things that let's sprinkle, make and break throughout this. So a couple of things that can make your cafe. It can make your cafe when you say hello to somebody as they walk through the door or when they come up to you at the counter. So here in the States, I noticed that people like to say welcome when somebody walks through the door, no matter how far away the door is. There's a thing here where the cafe industry has decided that it is better practice to yell out welcome to somebody when they come through the door of a cafe. Okay. If that's something that culturally it seems to be something that works here, and that's awesome. It is, and in Australia the difference would be that you would be warm when somebody walks up to you at the POS. It's different in every culture. The main thing to remember there is, however, being greeted no matter where you are, and it needs to happen. At some stage, being greeted is something that people just love. And it's a tiny little detail, but it definitely goes a long way to making your cafe successful. A polar opposite of that, well, let me say it this way. Another thing that definitely makes your cafe, and it's something that I experience that doesn't get done a lot in the neighborhood cafes where I live, is asking people their name when they place their order and learning what that person's name and their coffee order is. So there's a cafe that I go to take meetings if I just nearby me here, and it's interesting because I've been going there for 3 years and never once has anyone asked me my name, and I might go there 2 or 3 times a week, and it's not that they they don't owe me to ask me my name. Like, I'm not owed anything by that. But as a customer that comes in semi-frequently, I would feel more welcomed and that I wanted to go there if people said, "Hey Lee, how are you?" when you walk in. It's just something that makes my experience much nicer, and I feel more welcomed to be there. And it doesn't cost anything. It's a cultural investment by the owners to teach people how to do that. So I think it makes a cafe, certainly everywhere I've worked, our customers have always commented on how much they love that people remember their names and what their orders are. Other things, little details that make a cafe, and this happens a lot in Australia. I notice that in cafes here it's not the same thing, but filling people's glasses with water. I know that this happens in European cafes a lot. I know it happens a lot in some Asian cafes where it's sit-down service. But filling people's cups and then refilling people's cups is a small little detail that goes a long way. Another one that goes a really long way to making your cafe successful is when people sit down, they have their cup of coffee, is going and asking them if they'd like another cup of coffee, so that they don't have to interrupt the interaction they're having with people or interrupt reading a book to go and order another coffee. Choosing some of the finer details that are non-verbal cues about the culture and what your cafe is that will definitely make or break your cafe are the details in the choices that you make around branding, ceramics, and other sustainable choices that you make with regards to things like straws and disposable cups and the plates that you serve on. Hands down, the cups and the plates that you choose are going to be a huge deciding factor for the kind of customers that you will attract. So will cheap teaspoons and silverware, or cutlery, depending how you call it. It absolutely plays a role in the way, or the signaling. And think of it that way. The smaller details that you pay attention to are a key signaler for who, I'm not even sure if that's a real word, but for all intent and purposes, let's just say that that's a word. So think of those things as a signaler for who your customer is. If you have a very beautiful cafe, but you have cheap silverware, what that signals to people is these people don't actually have a lot of money to deliver on what their brand is supposed to be. It also says to people that you don't actually really care the quality of the experience that I have on all levels. You just want this to be Instagram-able. You want this to be Instagram worthy. And that's really important to understand. Putting yourself in the place of how your customer is going to perceive your cafe is paramount to the success of your business. And on this, I want to say something about the way that people are treated when they come into your cafe, because this is the number one defining thing that will make or break your cafe. If the people that you hire to work in your cafe don't deliver 120% on the hospitality that their profession requires from them, it doesn't matter how beautiful your cafe looks, it doesn't matter how great your coffee tastes, it doesn't matter how good your food is, it's going to be infinitely harder for you to be successful if the hospitality isn't there. It is the one thing that you have to nail 120% to have any chance at being long-term successful as a cafe. It's the detail in that dictates the detail about everything else. I hope that has been helpful for those who, excuse me, who contact me and say, so, what are the things that I need to look out for when opening my cafe? Start at those things when you're looking at what the finishing touches should be, or when you're trying to understand what your concept is. On that note, peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day, and stay tuned for the next episode of our podcast, where we'll be announcing the sponsors for our upcoming event coming up in Sydney.